thanks to the witnesses for being here. I've been focused on this area for a while in my career, the Trans-Sahara Partnership Act. But obviously, the Sahel is getting very dangerous. Right? I mean, it's always been problematic, but with the latest events in Sudan, I had called for a special envoy previously that would report to the president. Would that be a helpful office to have?
Hello, Mr. Chairman. It's good to see you.
You too.
Thank you for the advocacy for an envoy. We would agree that having a U.S. government envoy to focus on Sudan would uplift the already considerable efforts by 3 ambassadors who are focused full-time on Sudan, as well as the Africa Bureau. And I want you to know that's under active and serious consideration by the administration.
Great. Well, I look forward to working with you and my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to perhaps move that process forward. It's been about 7 months since we withdrew and abandoned our embassy in Khartoum. That's of grave concern. I think this conflict is getting worse, not better. Worried about the atrocities committed by the Wagner Group and their rapid support forces, formerly known as the Janjaweed. These horrendous crimes include motivated killing in Darfur that echoes the genocide 20 years ago. And further west in Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso, there have been hundreds of recorded terrorist attacks by ISIS in the Sahel. They appear to be coordinated with the foreign terrorist organization known as JNIM, a French acronym that stands for Union for Support of Islam and Muslims. As I mentioned, I championed the Trans-Sahara Counterterrorism Partnership Act many years ago. Can you give me an update on how that is working and how that's being applied to the situation?
Mr. Chairman, when that program was first developed with support from leaders like you, it was an innovative approach to addressing the problems in the Sahel. But over time, it became less effective, in part because of the changing conditions on the ground, and in part because the way the program was structured, we didn't optimize, I think, the interoperability that you see here. We have suggested to Congress that we would like to talk with you about how to update that program. I can tell you that both the benefits and the drawbacks of that program were considered in the design of the Global Fragility Act and in the policy that we developed on the basis of the GFA, the strategy to promote stability and prevent conflict, where we're focused in coastal West Africa to prevent the expansion of the problems in the Sahel to our friends and partners in coastal West Africa.
Okay. Can you tell me about, because you have the Wagner Group trying to provide stability, sort of like a military police force, and then you've got the radical Islamists in the Sahel. Then you have the French. Now, what does it look like for the French now in that part of the world?
French forces have been withdrawn from Mali. They've been withdrawn from Burkina Faso, and now they are undergoing, they're in the last weeks of their full withdrawal from Niger at the requirement of the Nigerian junta. So that leaves
The vacuum.
That leaves, well, worse than a vacuum, it leaves Wagner, it leaves Russian influence, and it leaves leaderships, certainly in Mali, that are not respecting civilian security, safety, and in the excuse of fighting, VEOs often get civilians in their sights.
So that vacuum is basically filled by Wagner and the Islamic extremists?
I think that is clearly solidly the case in Mali. It is still it's not fully developed in Burkina Faso and in Niger. It is very concerning that we have seen Wagner officials speaking to the leadership in Burkina Faso, and then we are seeing Russian Ministry of Defense officials in Niger.
Yeah, it's interesting. Prigozhin, I think, when actually the merchant of death that we traded for the basketball player, the vape pipe, he the Russians sent him down to negotiate with the Wagner group in Africa to swear their allegiance to Putin. And after they did that, within a matter of days, Prigozhin was shot down out of the sky. About 2 months after his unsuccessful coup. I found that interesting. Are you concerned about, when I chaired the Homeland Security Committee, it was during the rise of ISIS and the caliphate. Are you worried about that phenomenon happening in the Sahel right now, and how sophisticated could they be in terms of external operations?
One of the reasons why we have had a long-standing security cooperation relationship with the Nigerian armed forces was exactly because of the concern that control of territory, freedom to operate, could create a even more complicated situation if the ISIS forces and the JNIM forces in the region believe they then have the ability to operate externally. And it's the reason why we need to continue to work with those partners that we can work with to counter that.
Have you seen any designs or plans of them to aspire to external attacks, or is it just more focused on in the Sahel?
At this point, the focus of those groups is assessed to be in the Sahel.
Right. I just met with a lot of the top Ukrainian military leaders, and I have to say I'm always amazed at their strength and courage and their tenacity and their fighters. They envision a time where moving in the future, hopefully when there's more success on the battlefield, where they could take the place of the Wagner group and replace them. And I think that would be a change for the better. But I just throw that out to you as an interesting side note. But anyway, I appreciate the work you do. This area has always been tricky and troublesome. And I worry that our Belt and Road Initiative has not been successful in Africa. And if they don't have an alternative, they're going to turn to other groups like Wagner or like China, who obviously does participate quite a bit in the African continent. And this will be the largest continent in the world, population-wise, in the next decade. And I think it's very important we keep our eye focused on it. And finally, I'll give you an update, Mr. Chairman, on our PEPFAR negotiations. We're very committed to a reauthorization of PEPFAR, and it's a tricky process up here, but I've been up here long enough to know how to get things done, and it's my intention to get this one done too. So with that, I yield back.